So today we're going to look a little further into the concept of identity and the examples that we find throughout the scriptures of how identity applies to living prophets. And we're going to focus our attention on Peter. And the account says, "So when they had dined, Jesus saith to Simon Peter,
Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these?
Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee.
Feed my lambs. Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me?
Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee.
Feed my sheep. Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me?
Lord, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I love thee.
Feed my sheep.
This account is interesting when viewed through the lens of identity. Jesus is drawing attention to Peter's primary identity as a fisherman. And we know this from a few clues that pop up in those verses. First of all, Jesus is using not the new name of Peter. Instead, he's referring to him by his prior name of Simon, son of Jonas. Now, that name, that identity of Peter, is what was driving Peter to return to be a fisherman after the death and resurrection of the Savior. It was his primary identity as a son of Jonas and a fisherman that led Peter to not only return to those activities, but it affected the way he viewed the world and how he should use his time. There are 4 questions valuable to this encounter. First, if you think, what facets of Peter's identity are evident in this encounter with Jesus? Well, clearly his identity as a fisherman, 1, and 2, his loyalty to his earthly father, Jonas. 2, what impact did context have on his primary identity? If you remember, one of the things that researchers told us about identity is that it's highly contextual. Certain aspects or facets of our many identities will emerge and assume greater control over how we think and behave depending on the context in which we're in. So here we see Peter back into the familiar context of fishing on a lake which he knew very well and had grown up, take a greater persuasion over how he was spending his time. Third question, in spite of what Peter thought of himself, which facet of his identity was primary? If you were to ask Peter, and this is an interesting question for all of us, we tend to espouse or believe things about ourselves that are not exactly accurate in how we spend our time and in how we behave. They might be closely aligned sometimes, but sometimes they're completely far off. And here Jesus is drawing that attention to that fact. Peter, throughout the Gospels, is the first and most vocal supporter of the Savior, saying that he would die for him, that he would never deny him. You don't remember the accounts. And yet here, Jesus is drawing attention to the fact that as my chief apostle, you've said, and you know I've said to you, there are other things that we should be doing with our time. And yet Peter, driven by this primary identity as a fisher of men and as a son of Jonas, is here doing things consistent with those identities and not his identity as a son of God. How did Jesus invite Peter to choose to reorder the facets of his identity? He was putting in conflict by one calling him his name, Simon Peter, and then introducing Lovest thou these, the results, the surplus, the fish, the things that his primary identity produce? Lovest thou these more than me? Jesus was putting right out in front of Peter and the others to see that what he was espousing and what he was doing was not in alignment with his invitation from the Savior to leave those things alone and become and pursue his child of God identity. And the same question is true for each of us. What are those things that we do? What are the beliefs that we hold that are simply inconsistent with the son or daughter of God identity he's inviting us to assume? Our challenge is to bring those things to the surface through introspection and through the use and comparison of our beliefs, actions, and behaviors to those of the Son of God, and identify those things that we lack yet. This is the constant invitation that Jesus has extended to us. This is the challenge of our lifetime, to become his disciple and be more fully consecrated and committed to him.